welcome back to the program. It's the Vicki McKenna Show. Early voting for the August 13th primary and election for the decision on the constitutional amendment questions has begun. So you can vote now. Just want everyone to know that. What we're going to talk about is, I don't know what's on your individual ballot. We want people to vote for Eric Hovde, obviously. But we also want people to vote yes on two constitutional questions that have only really gotten negative attention by the Wisconsin media. So we'll talk about that coming up. Skylar Kroy from Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty is joining me. All right, let's get to these questions, these two constitutional questions. Do a few myth versus facts here. Here's what the left is spending millions of dollars, particularly in places like Waukesha County, in the Fox Valley. They're spending millions of dollars to convince people, conservatives even, that they should vote no on these two constitutional questions. They say it's a power grab by Republicans. They say it would give legislators sole power over spending. They say that it completely eliminates accountability. They say that it eliminates checks and balances, that it would make the government unable to respond in a real emergency, etc. So let's start out with what these questions are and then address those declarations by the left trying desperately to get people to vote no on this.
Yeah, happy to. So both questions relate to unilateral spending by the governor. So in a system that actually has checks and balances, the way it's supposed to work is that the legislature appropriates funds by passing legislation, and then the governor spends those funds. Unfortunately, what happened during COVID was the federal government came in and gave a bunch of money, billions of dollars, to the state government. And it appeared during this time that Governor Evers, under Wisconsin law, was basically able to just spend it however he wants, without the checks and balances that would normally come from the state legislature. Now, a point that I want to emphasize here is that it's not a power grab to say that we're going to try to go back and return to normal constitutional order the way it's supposed to be. In fact, what's a power grab is the very notion that a single person can spend this money without checks and balances. So what these amendments are going to do is basically return us to normal constitutional order where the legislature is appropriating money and the governor's spending it. And I would just say to everyone who's listening, this should not be a partisan issue. It shouldn't be Republican versus Democrat, because even if there are people who might like how Governor Evers spent this money during the COVID-19 crisis, there is going to come a day in the near future where there is a Republican governor, whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's going to happen. And are those people going to want a Republican governor to have that same kind of power?
Well, let me give you an example. Tony Evers used some of the COVID money. By the way, he's sitting on a huge mountain of it still. He used some of the COVID money for Planned Parenthood. Now, imagine a Republican governor coming in and using emergency federal dollars, billions of them, for whatever he wants to fund. And maybe it's crisis pregnancy centers, or maybe it's, something, some side program supporting school choice. This would make the liberals light their hair on fire. But this is what Evers is doing. He's using it as a slush fund. He's using it to fund pet projects. He's using it to allow left-wing organizations to not have to raise their own money for capacity building, which is another way to say political efforts and political activism. That's what he's doing with the money. They like that he's doing that with the money because it's benefiting their political goals. The whole point of these constitutional questions, and it needs two to do this, is to say that's not the authority, that should never be the authority of a governor, is to use taxpayer resources for whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah, Vicki, and I would just add to that, I think there's sort of a broader attack on the very notion of putting these kinds of votes to the people. I think there are left-wing interest groups that have caught on to the fact that you can amend the Constitution and by letting the people vote on these sorts of matters. And now we're starting to see them realize that and try and put a lot of money into opposing these efforts because they realize what a powerful tool it can be to let the people vote and decide on these matters.
Yeah, and they don't like it. That's true. They don't like it. And they like the idea of one single executive having complete control over tax money to fund left-wing special interests. That's the condition of Wisconsin now. If you vote yes on these two questions, that will no longer be the condition of Wisconsin. The legislature and the governor together are going to have to figure out what to do with emergency federal dollars. One thing is they say, well, it will cause gridlock and then we won't be able to respond effectively to an emergency.
So if we just look at what happened with COVID-19, that's not true. The state legislature was very quick to respond on that, and the governor is still going to have power to declare states of emergency under Wisconsin law. The governor can declare states of emergency for 60 days, and the governor gets a lot of power to do a lot of things during those 60 days unilaterally, probably as the governor should, because if there's a genuine state of emergency, there needs to be someone who can manage that crisis. But at some point, you have to return the normal constitutional order. And the legislature has the ability to convene very quickly. This is not the 1800s where you had to send out horse and buggy to notify everyone. No, like everyone knows there's an emergency, and the legislature is able to act very quickly. And I think what bothers some people is that they might not like certain decisions that the legislature makes, but it's not really an objection to say, I don't like the outcome of a democratic process.
Well, it is if you have reinvented the meaning of the word democracy. We are asking people to vote yes on these two constitutional questions. If you go to will-law.org, you can see a big myth versus fact. One sheet on this. You can print it off, hand it out to your friends. You can use it if anybody's asking you what the heck is going on. If you go to your voter guides, which most county parties should have at this point, you'll get additional details there as well. Hey, Skylar, thanks very much for joining me on the show.
Happy to be on, Vicki. Thank you.
And we're going to take a break on the Vicki McKenna Show. I will be right back.